I just looked there. He's ready to So Jennifer, are you ready? We're live now. Okay, then we'll call the meeting to order. And just before we start, I just want everybody to know that this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, so the whole world can see you. I'm telling you. And Councillor Reno is not participating because he has declared a conflict earlier in the day. So he won't be participating in the discussion or the decision. Other than that, it's a single item agenda. To rezone a portion of PID 604228888 from settlement residential to zone to mixed use zone. And Mr. Lamy, I'm assuming this is properly before council?
Yes, Ward, and I'm satisfied this matter. Application for an amendment is before council properly.
Okay, thank you. Gareth,
Great. So
overview by plan.
thank you, Mr. Warden. So I'll just give a quick overview here. Again, we are here to consider an amendment to the land use bylaw, which is a rezoning of PID 604228888. Currently, the lot is split zoned between the mixed use zone and the settlement residential 2 zone, and the application and proposal is to rezone so that the entire lot falls under the mixed use zone. I guess a point of note for council is that when we are considering a rezoning, the key determination for council to make is whether or not the rezoning itself is in conformance with municipal planning strategy policies, and not to deliberate on the merits of the proposed development. Our policies do require that an applicant state a proposed use, and in this case, that's been honestly, the majority of the discussion has been around the proposed use. But we also have policy to say that council should also be considering any other use that's permitted in that zone, because the applicant or developer is under no obligation to carry out what's been proposed. So it's a bit of it can seem a little bit counterintuitive when you first hear that, but basically the intent is to think about anything that could happen because there's no guarantee. And ultimately what we are looking at is the policies in the municipal planning strategy that talk about land use and different kinds of character areas, and whether or not the change from mixed use to settlement residential 2 in this case is appropriate and in keeping with those policies. In the staff report that we presented at council at first reading and also to the Municipal Planning Advisory Committee, the staff recommendation is to approve the request, as staff are of the opinion that it does align with the planning strategy policies. So that is the recommended motion.
Yeah.
And I guess before I turn it over for any questions, just a bit of a reminder that the current zoning was brought in 2020 as part of the municipal plan review. In particular, in this area around exit 6, the settlement residential 2 zone was brought in response to a pretty significant amount of input from members of the community discussing the wish to restrict or limit commercial development along Highway 3 between exit 6 and Hubbard's proper. So that's how the current zoning was put in place. There's been, whether it was intentional that it extended north, I mean, it obviously was intentional, somebody made that change, but the discussion was really around Highway 3. So I think there's something to be said there too, that were this proposal along Highway 3 for significant commercial development, we would have heard strongly that may not align with what was desired, at least when we did that review in 2014 to 2020. Yeah, so that's about it there. I would be happy to answer any questions. And then also part of what we normally do in a public hearing here is just a quick review of the public hearing report, which is basically just a review. So the application was submitted by Larex Management. And that was received by council on July 28th, when direction was given to staff to proceed with the staff report and draft amendments. In terms of the meeting dates, July 28th was the application, the first time it came to council. August 31st, we held a public information meeting in the Hubbard's area at the Hubbard's Area Lions Club. September 21st, the report and proposal were considered by the Municipal Planning Advisory Committee, and that report is contained here. October 13th was first reading, and then of course tonight, November 10th being the public hearing. We also met our standard advertising requirements, so that involved advertisements in the progress bulletin for all of the meetings I just mentioned, in addition to actually 3 notices of tonight's public hearing. Aside from our progress bulletin newspaper ads, we did our relatively new part of our procedure is to send early notice to adjacent municipalities. So we sent that to HRM early on in the process. We didn't receive any correspondence from them in relation to this proposal. We also on October 19th sent out a neighbor notification package. So that goes to all properties within 30 meters of the subject property. We also on October 13th posted a sign on the site, and we've got a new sign that's more visible. So this was the first time we got to use that. And then every time there was an ad in the progress bulletin, those were posted on our municipal website and on our municipal social media channels, as well as on the office doors. The fees have also been paid and received. So again, that's just part of bringing this file to the public hearing in good order. So with that said, I'll leave it there unless there's any questions.
I just want to let them know there are a couple of chairs out here if you want to come and grab them.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Any questions at this point from council? Okay, thank you, Gareth. Presentation from the developer. I don't know the developer personally, so they're here.
Do you guys want to say anything or?
We're good. We provided that kind of 2-page overview of what we're proposing.
Okay. Okay, so now we're then open from comments from the public, and I just want to indicate that when you wish to speak, that you stand up. I'll recognize you, that you state your name and your civic address so that we can have it in the record. And we'll start out with 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to speak. And if time permits, we can go back to others after everybody else has had the opportunity to speak. So is there anyone in the public who wishes to address council? We've heard from a lot of you. Sure.
Someone's got to start.
Might as well. My name is Jerry Giffen. My civic address is 52 King Street, Chester. I live in the village of Chester, but I'm a partner in a business that's within the Hubbard's streetscape project and in the municipality of Chester. So that's why I'm here. I wanted to make 3 points. The first one is that I have a personal opinion that urban or rural sprawl is not a good strategy, whether it's residential or commercial. I think that building hubs with higher concentration or density with the ability of residents and visitors to walk or accomplish tasks within walking distance of each other is more strategic. Go to the doctor and walk to the pharmacy to get your prescription refilled, get a coffee at a cafe, go to the market, and then go to a restaurant without having to get into your car. The village of Chester, I think, is a good example of this. The number of visitors coming to Chester has been increasing. At least that's my personal observation. They park their cars, they go to the waterfront, they do some shopping, they eat at a restaurant, and it's good for everyone. There are now 5 restaurants within walking distance of each other. And they benefit more from being in the hub than the disadvantages of competing with each other. People come because they have a choice. They come back because maybe they want to try one of the other restaurants. Those are potentials for the main part of Hubbard's. So that's point number 1. Let's build a hub in Hubbard's like we have in Chester. Second point is depending on the nature of the development, it has the potential to harm or impact on businesses that are in the Hubbard Streetscape project. Again, that depends on what the nature of the tenants within the development are. And my third point is that it's an observation, is that this is not necessarily in line with decisions that the council has already made. So the first one is the council is in support of the Hubbard Streetscape project. This project is, quote, focused on creating safer streets to encourage and support active living in Hubbards. Basically, walking or riding a bike, that type of thing. An example, this summer, the World Sailing Championships were held in Hubbards. Many of the athletes, supporters, and families walked because there's no way they all had cars. It wasn't possible. So they were walking to local businesses, having coffee, eating, shopping, etc. So that's an example of the benefits of having a hub. The other project that council is in support of is the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities Main Street project. And the project aims to help communities identify potential Main Street areas. The project notes that, quote, shops and services on main streets are predominantly local owned and clustered together to benefit each other on streets that are vibrant, human scale, and express genuine local culture. This project is also supported by a grant to support reductions in greenhouse gases. What a better way to reduce greenhouse gases than to walk or ride a bike? Those are my comments. If anybody has any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Jerry this time?
Great.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Oh,
Yes.
You don't think these two things can coexist? Is that what you're suggesting? What's proposed in the Hubbard Streetscape and this proposal?
Well, it's not within the streetscape area, it's further out.
Yes.
I guess the only thing that might make sense would just be to have a gas station. But to have other kinds of developments really isn't in line with building a hub where people come and walk and enjoy multiple amenities at the same time without having to get in their car and drive. Gas station is a service that services largely the 103. Personally, I think the gas station in Hubbards is ugly. It would be nice if that was either replaced with something nicer or it was moved out to the highway.
So you didn't say equivocally, but I'm hearing that you're not in favor of this rezoning.
I am not.
Okay, you never did state.
I'm sorry. No, I am not in favor of it because it doesn't support the idea of a hub.
I thought that's where you were, but you never did say it. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I didn't.
No, absolutely. I'm not in favor of the proposed change.
Thanks, Jerry.
Zoning. Sorry, I should have said that. at the beginning.
No.
haven't seen you in a while.
Yes, how are you? Thanks.
Anyone else wish to speak?
My name is Carrie Miller. I'm here representing my family. We have property at 554 Mill Lake Road West, in Hubbards. Okay. So not all development is good for communities. We as a family are opposed to the highway-oriented commercial and light industrial development being proposed at Exit 6 in Hubbards. We're opposed because we don't believe this type of development brings, the type of development being proposed is in the best interests of the residential and cottage community that already exists there. Or good for the environment, or good for the village of Hubbards. We believe that at most, the settlement residential 2 zoning currently on the property should be retained to protect the surrounding community and Hubbards. The land being proposed for rezoning and industrial development does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in an already established community of single-family dwellings and cottage properties. Several hundred of them, in fact, who have been community for well over 80 years. The policy intents of the Chester Municipal Planning Strategy recognize the importance of protecting the existing nature of the communities when it's stated. The intent of the strategy is to celebrate its character and heritage by recognizing and enhancing the unique character of various parts of the municipality and encouraging suitable rural and village settlement patterns. The planner's report states that, and I quote, "The rezoning is not anticipated to result in a new or worsened conflict with existing surrounding use." That is just not correct. A rezoning, which would result in the developer being able to put in 4 times larger buildings, paved parking area, lighting, and resulting traffic, would obviously worsen a situation that is already incompatible with the nature of the surrounding community. Policy CC 15 of the Chester Municipal Planning Strategy, D, says that economic development is important, but it also says that existing economic development should be compatible with the area's existing character. And F says that it must safeguard the natural environment, and especially water quality. Our family is hard pressed to see how putting a commercial and light industrial development in the middle of an existing residential and cottage community on land situated between 2 lakes and 1 important water course is adhering to any of these municipal planning objectives. For council to then approve a rezoning that would allow the developer to create a complex 4 times larger building, more paving, more runoff, more light pollution, more traffic, and even fewer developmental regulations seems incomprehensible and not at all in keeping with the area's character or municipal planning objectives as outlined in the plan itself. Most troubling is that outlined in a 2017 report by the Journal of Urban Economics and What Good Common Sense Dictates, that almost all criminology studies have linked higher rates of crime in a community with the introduction of commercial development, especially commercial development that is car-oriented, with large buildings not occupied at night, extensive parking areas, and little or no foot traffic. That is exactly the type of commercial development being proposed here, adjacent to our community. Those are our concerns about our own backyard. But we're not just concerned about our own backyard, we're also concerned about the village of Pubbritz and the businesses there. Policy CC 15E clearly states the municipal planning strategy goal is not to create highway strip development in the community. Yet that is exactly what is being proposed by the developer and supported by the planning report. Some planners and economic development officials state that strong highway commercial areas provide for healthy development. The developer has tried to sell that to the community with promises of fast food, fast coffee, fast gas, and fast food. That thinking has been disproven repeatedly by research and practice. In fact, as shown in the Strong Towns organization, who have been studying villages and towns, economic growth in the US for years, the reality is just the opposite. Actual case studies show highway development guts and kills small towns and businesses with very limited tax benefits to the municipality. Much more positive economic and social spin-off is achieved by working with existing businesses and developing existing commercial land within the village or town. Those are the types of communities people want to live in and people want to invest in. We understand that the owner already has some developmental rights that we can't do anything about. That's a fact we can't change. Council has heard that the community should have expected this type of development when Exit 6 was completed. We want to point out that prior to the deal cut with the Department of Transportation, This property had no public road access. So the community and neighbors had no expectation that it would be developed, let alone as a commercial and light industrial subdivision. Settlement residential 2 zoning was put in place by the municipality during the municipal planning review just 2 years ago, which is something the community should be able to trust in. The developer knew that the zoning was on his property when he commenced this project, and the current zoning hasn't stopped him from clearing the land or starting his project. But he wants more. If council approves the rezoning, it would allow for even larger, taller, and denser commercial and industrial use than what is already possible. With that rezoning, the developer plans to build out an area more than twice the size of the existing Hubbard Shopping Center with no minimum area indicated and building heights to be determined, but with paved parking for over 450 cars. As council knows, once land is rezoned and development rights are granted, anything allowed under that zone can happen. Even council cannot control that. In closing, this is not just vacant land around exit 6 that you are considering rezoning. It's an existing well-developed neighborhood of single-family homes and cottages near a village that has a well-established commercial businesses, and new business owners are making investments. Our family, along with many other concerned residents, would respectfully ask council to listen to your own municipal planning strategies, to keep the current zoning in place, settlement residential 2, and to reject the mixed application for rezoning to the higher density and less restrictive mixed use zone. If we could ask you to do more to protect our communities, we would. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you prepared to take questions if anybody has them? I don't know if they do, but just, does anyone? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the issue?
Councilor Stash, after that, discussed some issues with my brother Jeff Burchell recently, and
I'm going to ask that question.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Richard Elliott. I'm a resident of 1499 Mill Lake Road, #1. I just want to mention, yesterday, all of you as councillors received a petition signed by 130 people indicating our opposition to the rezoning request. I trust you've all received that. And I wanted to take an opportunity this evening, and thank you for that, to share with you 5 points that I think it would be important to consider as you make your decision on this rezoning request. The first is, as you've heard, the size and location and the existing character of this property and the area surrounding it. We're talking about a property the size of 23 football fields. At the end of the day, if you approve this rezoning request, that is then open to much larger scale commercial and industrial development than is currently the case on the entirety of that property. And I think you have to consider what the impact of that would be on the existing and surrounding property. Second, I think it's important to consider really the sole basis of this request, and that is that the developer that is proposing this change to the zoning wants more. As has already been mentioned, part of this property is already zoned mixed use. The other part is zoned SR2. There are existing development rights that the property owner has, commercial development. But the reason that you're being asked to rezone this property is because that's not sufficient for them. They want to do something larger, bigger, denser. That's not in and of itself a good enough reason to agree to a rezoning request. You need to think about the broader public interest. Third, what your decision is at the end of the day is not just about the particular plans the developer may be proposing at this point, as we've quite rightly heard. You have to consider about what all the other things, all the other commercial and light industrial uses to which rezone would open the door. That said, You also somewhat paradoxically have to consider the development that is proposed before you to some degree. And that in and of itself is cause for concern. You've heard already the scale of what is being envisioned by the developer if the rezoning goes ahead. Parking for over 400 cars, a number of large commercial buildings. And the square footage of what they've proposed is actually a couple of times larger than the existing commercial space that already exists in downtown Hubbards, which itself, I think, offers some better opportunities for commercial development that would be to the benefit of the community and respond to some of the desires for more retail services. Certainly better to build out the space that is already zoned for commercial use than to authorize a larger scale clear cutting of new land to create more urban sprawl. Concerns have already been expressed about that before. I should note that the developer at the original public information meeting did confirm that they've done some studies on the impact of their anticipated development on water usage and on traffic volumes. Those studies have not been shared, although they've been asked for. But I think it's entirely reasonable to expect, given the stated objective of pulling highway traffic off the highway into this new development, there will be a significant increase in traffic into the middle of this established residential and cottage community. So my third point there is that just based on what is already being proposed before you as the likely outcome if you open the door with this rezoning, there's good reason to be concerned. And that's in and of itself sufficient basis to refuse the rezoning request. However, fourth point, as noted, you need to consider the other potential uses that rezoning would authorize. And here you have to consider the scale and the type of commercial and industrial uses that rezoning would authorize. As for the scale, as you've heard, there would be a significant increase in what could actually be done if this entire property were rezoned as mixed use. The total floor area of the buildings that the developer could put up as of right would be 4 times larger, and there is no prescribed maximum. The maximum footprint would be up to 3 times larger. There is no prescribed maximum, and there's simply no limit on the height of the buildings that could be put up as of right on a property that is rezoned mixed use. And again, consider we're talking here about a property that is the size of 23 football fields. You also have to think about the types of uses that are permitted if you rezone it to mixed use zone. This opens up even more of the property to additional uses such as large campgrounds and RV parks, recycling depots, salvage yards, abattoirs. These are permitted uses under mixed use zoning, and they're not appropriate given the location of this property. So that in and of itself is a good reason to oppose the rezoning request. And then fifth and finally, you've heard some reference to some of the municipal planning strategy policies that should guide you in making this decision. And I think there are a few things to perhaps note about that. The first is that the overarching objective, as stated in the municipal planning strategy, is to control very large or disruptive land uses, which is certainly on the table given what is proposed, and to safeguard the natural environment. And I remind you that this property is located between 3 lakes, in fact, runs right up against one of them, Solar Lake. Another policy that forms part of the municipal planning strategy notes that you should be avoiding conflicts between land uses. So it's perplexing to us that the report from the planner can state that the rezoning is not anticipated to result in new or worsening conflict with existing surrounding uses, given what has already been stated about what they plan to do, and given the larger scale and type of developments that rezoning would authorize. Third policy point, your policies, and specifically draw your attention to policy B11 in the municipal planning strategy, does contemplate that the mixed use zone is appropriate for highway exit development. But it should be noted that rezoning this property to mixed use was rejected a couple of years ago when the new municipal planning strategy was adopted. Now, you heard at the beginning of the meeting that the concern there was really the land south of Highway 103, between Highway 103 and St. Margaret's Bay Road. But that's not, in fact, what the zoning is applied to. The zoning does extend the SR2 zone north of Highway 103. And I suggest to you that there's something a bit arbitrary and illogical about the notion that The concerns about allowing this kind of development a few hundred feet south of Highway 103 somehow disappear a few hundred feet north of Highway 103. That to me is an arbitrary and illogical distinction. And yet it keeps coming up over and over. Finally, you've already heard mentioned the fact that the policies say that one of the things to be avoided is commercial and industrial development that constitutes highway strip development, but that is in fact what is being proposed to you. And finally, the compatibility of the proposed use of land with existing land uses needs to consider traffic, vehicle headlights, and noise. The policy specifically directs that you should be considering those things. And yet we can reasonably expect, given what is proposed, that all of those things are going to be worsened by authorizing this development and authorizing the kind of development that rezoning would permit. So if I could simply say in closing, the mere fact that the developer who already has some commercial development rights wants to do something bigger and larger is not a good enough reason to grant them that request. And instead, you need to be thinking about the public interest here. And there are plenty of good reasons to not allow this rezoning, to not open the door to the larger scale commercial and industrial development that would follow. And there are good reasons in your own policy documents to deny that request. And I respectfully ask that you do so. Thanks very much.
Thank you for comments. Anyone, any questions before the gentleman leaves? Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council?
I just want to echo what.
Well, you
Can I say that?
well, you just get up, state your name again and all that kind of
Hi,
stuff.
my name is Lee Gillum, and my property is situated right close to where the new development will go in. And I just wanted to echo what the other lady said when she came up, and I appreciate the research that she did about the safety. I think of the concerns that I have, safety is one that I haven't really spoken or addressed the council to with the letters that I've written. And I appreciate that she mentioned it because it is a concern around what the traffic, when the traffic comes in, especially close to where my driveway is. And the fact that I can see my window from the, like where the clearing is, makes me feel a bit unsafe. And the fact that there's, factual information to show that I am actually more unsafe. It's just another reason to be concerned about the development, especially at the larger scale.
Thank
What's
you.
your address, please?
198 Mill Lake Road.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to, yes? Name, civic address, please.
Hi, my name is Joan Kaiser. I'm 37 Sims Avenue. I'm a little bit unprepared. I didn't plan to speak tonight, but I think we need to balance this conversation. Much like the lady that spoke earlier, my family too is from Hubbards. Many, many years, 3 small grandchildren. I do worry, as you talked about the hub, the safety. I'm also interested in the streetscape program. But I think that when we look at all of the properties being developed for residential, we can't deny that Hubbards is exploding. We are going to need new services. We're going to need other amenities. We are going to need diesel fuel. We are going to need extended hours for gas stations. And I would hate when we talk about the current Irving and Hubbards, and it's nice to be replaced. I hate to think that we would replace that and add other services that will bring heavy traffic, heavy vehicles, loud vehicles, trucks rumbling through early morning, late at night, and worse yet, when our children are in school. When our kids are on their bicycles, when our seniors are walking their pets. Everyone wants it, but not in my backyard. I don't want it in the yards, in the streets of our children, of our schools, of our families that have lived here for a long time. I think a power center type setup might be the way that we have to deal with the fact that Hubbards is exploding, that better services will be required. So for reporting this, I am in favor of rezoning project.
Thank you. Somebody else, you want to speak?
My name is Kathleen Odell. My civic address is 1237 Highway 329, Mill Cove, Nova Scotia. For me, I'm here. I recognize that a lot of folks who are attending tonight are from Mill Lake Road. I'm here to say that I don't support the development. I'm in opposition and I don't live directly on Mill Lake Road. And the reason why I don't support the development is for the simple fact that services need to be grown organically through the community, and they need to be done in a way where the public have access. So adding something off the highway doesn't help seniors with limited access to transit access those stores. What would make more sense would be additional seniors housing close to the existing hub, if we're looking at conversations about access. If we're looking at conversations about children and growing families, Walmart is not the answer. Atlantic superstores are not the answer. The answer is additional access to farmers markets, additional access to social services and recreation programs for children and families. I myself am a younger adult with a growing family. And the reason I chose to make Hubbard's my home was specifically that my child has access to a way of living where they can be outside, they can enjoy nature, and they can be supported with friends to enjoy spaces. I think the answer would be additional sidewalks like the Streetscapes project throughout Hubbard's. I don't see rezoning supporting that, and adding a plethora of low-paid jobs also doesn't help grow Hubbard's economically. What it does is reroute people away from existing businesses within the community. I myself am not as prepared as some of the other speakers, but I did feel it was important to come here. Although I know we're all busy, and I thank everyone for attending tonight, including those who are in favor of, because this is what it's about. We're about building a community, and I think that what supports that is not scaling in large developments, but supporting local businesses to grow through other initiatives. So thank you so much for your time this evening.
Questions, anyone for? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Okay,
Ross Shafford, 819 Highway 329. I didn't come prepared like everybody did there, but basically I just want to say that I've lived there my whole life, and I've watched businesses leave, and to tell you that somebody wants to come in and develop something in our community kind of excites me. You know, I know that similar to what Joan said, nobody wants it in their backyard, and I get that, but up on the highway and where the land's looking to be developed and what they're looking to asking for to be rezoned and put the big stuff out front, they can already put the big stuff out back. All they're asking is to put the bigger stuff out more by the highway, which I don't know, it makes more sense in my brain. It may be wrong, may be right, but I've watched my son, as an example, have to move away for a job when he was a kid. There was no jobs around. Banks left, the grocery store got smaller, the little stores left, everything kind of closes up, and we're left with great to have it, but we have small stuff in there, and as a family with us, that's a place you go and use as a convenience store and stuff now. It's not where you go for your major stuff. We have to go to Tantallon or Halifax or Bridgewater, and I don't know what the development will bring, but I just want to say that anything that enhances our community with businesses and makes more opportunities, whether they be low-key jobs or high-paying jobs, I encourage it, and I'm in favor of the proposal. So.
thank you.
Thank you, Ross.
Yeah. Hi. Jeff Champ, 1530 Highway 329. I honestly don't feel like I have enough information about exactly what that's going to look like, you know, visually. Is that exit 3? Is it exit 5? Honestly, I don't have a good concept of that, and I'm not sure if that's been fully shared. At this moment, I speak against it. I work as part of my career consulting small businesses, and it fascinates me that in Nova Scotia, we talk about small businesses as the backbone of our economy, and we keep breaking the back. You know, I do think if we have a development, let's call it like exit 3 or even closer to exit 5, there's lots of research to show that definitely impacts the core hub. And I mean, I can't imagine, you know, people love Mahone Bay and Chester for the very reason that it isn't that there's a town center, there's a place to go, there's entrepreneurs who make sure that their employees are paid, take mortgages out on their homes to stay open during COVID. They do a lot of things. And then the first people, by the way, that the community groups ask for donations to support the local hockey team. And it's the small businesses that are the first ones to step up. Honestly, it isn't Irving that's on the kid's jersey, and it's not Tim Hortons necessarily, or these other big businesses. It's our small businesses. And so it just always baffles me that the small business entrepreneurs that take the risk, that believe in their community, that create a sense of community with their businesses are the ones that end up actually getting the short end of the stick on this. So I don't know fully what's been thought about. I mean, I live in Hubbard's, obviously. With the world sailing and the development of the waterfront, with what's happened at Tuna Blue, and of course the Shore Club, which maybe some of you have been to before. It's, you know, I think Hubbard's has the potential to be another town center, attract a beautiful community like Mahone Bay and Chester. And we have a choice to either, and I don't know what's happened strategically to think about that. And definitely we need redevelopment. I don't think there's any question as the highway, you know, we're getting closer to Halifax every time another kilometer of pavement goes down. But personally, I would rather be a Mahone Bay Chester than Tantallon or Timberley, which does not, for me, have that sense of core center and township. And so I know it's harder in development and cost, but personally, I don't know what the vision space is for this, but I'd much rather see the core town developed into the services that we all need, gas station open later, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I know you have to work with landowners and business owners, et cetera, but I just can't imagine that if there's a Tim Hortons, a gas station, all those other things there, that it's not going to impact the business, because we don't see it in Chester and we don't see it in Mahone Bay, quite frankly. People come off the highway, they go into town, they get gas or coffee, and both of those coexist, but they're not coexisting in a development that's off the 103. And of course, the core town center. I haven't seen those examples. So I'd encourage you to think about the people that live there and the entrepreneurs and businesses, especially, that invest in those communities and that support our local charities, kids, and those programs that are actually the backbone of our communities. And at this point, I would be voting in favor of not to do that. I can't quote your policies and previous decisions like the others here tonight. I think did an excellent job of reminding us all that for whatever reason, you've made those strategic decisions all along, and to stay true to those values that guided you at this point, I should consider this evening.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Yeah.
Hi, Jillian Ettinger. I live at 91 Solar Lake. One of the very few residents that are there year round. I'm opposed to this because the biggest one for me is the environment. With having that there, it's going to cause a lot more pollution for our stocked lake that we enjoy fishing, and my children have been doing it since they were infants. I also am in agreement with the gentleman. Hubbard's is a beautiful town. If you put something on the highway, people aren't going to come off the highway to see our beautiful town. It's a draw that, you know, we need to, yes, grow, but again, I think it should be grown within the town and not away from it, for the many reasons that a lot of you have said. You know, there's a lot of seniors, you know, to be able to have that growth. Yes, the Airbnb is horrible, but you know, like, do you really need 24-hour gas? You know, if you're traveling on the highway, you can get that in Tantallon. It's 15 minutes away. It's going to ruin the potential of what we have fought for to have in that cottage country, and along with the residents that live in Mill Lake. But it's something that's going to disturb the ecosystem where we're at, and so that's why I'm strongly opposed to that.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah.
Hi there, thanks so much for the opportunity to speak and to exercise democracy. I'm really impressed at how eloquent my neighbors are like here. My voice sounds louder. I'm just really impressed at how
Name and civic address.
Oh, sorry, Rivka. My name is Rivka Sherman, and I live at 5 Creighton Harnish Lane in Mill Cove.
Okay.
And I'm just really impressed with the folks who've done so much research. But I'm just here as a person, a young person who's new to the area and who picked Hubbard's very consciously. And I'm just here to voice my opinion that I'm opposed to this rezoning. I think that very good points have been brought up. We can have development the way it's currently zoned. And nobody's mentioned the environment and like where we're going here in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Like gas stations may not be necessary. We're not talking about electrical charging stations. I don't hear anybody talking about more bike lanes and different forms of transportation. Like it's great to have grocery stores, but if the only way to get there is by car, we're just kind of repeating the same mistakes that other big cities have made. So I just want to reiterate the really lovely comments. I also want to talk about jobs. Our businesses can't stay open because there aren't enough people to work. So I've seen it happen before. They can build these big places and nobody wants to work at Tim Hortons. Like there's not, we could end up with like an empty cemetery development with nobody working there. And that other place in Hubbard's where they just opened Scotia Curry, that was empty for a long time. It looked kind of sad. So I think we have the space within our municipalities to expand. And like somebody else said, like Tintalon's 15 minutes away. I have no problem driving there. If I wanted to live in Timberlea, I would have moved to Timberlea. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I'm gonna end the public participation portion. So I have. Okay. So it's good to have everybody go to speak. Appreciate your comments. It's now up to council to determine where they want to go.
I just say, first of all, before I speak, I'd like to ask Garth, I have a letter here to read to him. Over here. It's Andrew and Jeff Burchell asked me to read this evening. A consortium of Solar Lake landowners have hired Jeff Hoffman as against Cooper to make the application to designate Solar Lake a lakeside protection zone similar to Sherbrooke Lake. Much like the twinning of the 103, we are excited for measured development in the area and think protecting the lake is consistent with the community development goals, and I agree. We are asking the council to delay the vote on this matter and align the lakefront protection zone application with the rezoning application. So I'm guessing, asking you just how that would be implemented and what effect it would have on the whole process.
Right, so so my understanding, and I'll make turn to Sam at a couple points here, is that council is not obligated to make a decision tonight, and they can defer that decision. If so just for clarity, we have not received an application to rezone Solar Lake to the lakeside zone yet. If we were to receive that application, we would begin our standard rezoning practice, the same process that we undertook for this request. So it would come to council for direction, and if directed to staff report, public information meeting, planning advisory committee, and then back to council. I'm just trying to think here. So unless council made the decision to defer this rezoning until we were at a point that they were ready to consider that, there would be a period of time. In order for us to get the lakeside zone to first read, that would take 2 to 3 months, likely at minimum. But so, and I guess the other point to make with that is if the rezoning today were approved, and then the lakeside zone application came forward and was approved, that would just overlay the change today. So it would change once, and then it would change again when the lakeside zone occurred. The potential risk there is that in the intervening period between when the lakeside zone
They may do something there.
development could occur that would be contrary to what the lakeside zone would eventually protect against. So it's complicated, but I hope that's.
That does answer my question.
So who is it, Floyd, that's?
If Andrew and Jeff Purcell, they're residents of the Solar Lake, I think there's 7 properties that actually are in our municipality along Solar Lake and along that area. And my understanding is that they've contacted someone to work on their behalf to start that process.
Yes, that is correct.
That part makes sense to me, but I just.
Well, they need to get the application in and get it moving. I would think, I don't think we
You
can
need to
delay
make aware.
this. Yeah. I don't think we can delay this process for that.
The letter will be sent within 2 or 3 business days.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. So the letter's in the contact. Yeah.
Okay, I had a couple questions for you, and it's just because I don't have the land use bylaw memorized like you do. So, I mean, there was some comments on height, and so I'm just wondering, if we were to rezone, what the height restrictions would be on the building.
Okay, so I'll just,
Versus the next use.
What?
The difference.
Yeah. Because I know we have height restrictions on almost everything.
And there's obviously many permitted uses in each zone, so I'll try to generalize as much as possible. So looking at the SR2 zone versus the mixed use zone, there is a difference in the potential height.
Yeah.
From what I'm seeing, virtually all uses in the SR2 zone would be limited to 11 meters in height. There are a few exceptions to that. So anything that would go through a development agreement could be higher than that. So multi-unit, like a 20-unit apartment building would go through a development agreement, that could exceed that height limit.
Yeah.
But many of the listed uses in that zone would be limited to 11 meters if they went through just a permit and not going through a higher process of development. In the mixed use zone, there is no height limit, with a very few exceptions. A couple of specific uses like forestry processing, like a lumber mill, would have a height limit, but most uses do not, whether they go through a development agreement or not.
So you say, so can you could build a 30-story building?
Theoretically.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, but it's right. There is no similar, I guess, in many ways to our general basic zone. There's not a height limit in the mixed use zone. So that's a fair comparison. Or yeah.
And types of development allowed by right.
So the types of development allowed by right are essentially the same. Both zones have a clause that says, so we have a number of uses that are listed, and then we have a sort of a catch-all clause, I would call it, that says any other commercial or institutional development, and then it lists floor areas. So both zones allow that any other type of commercial or institutional, but it comes down, as was mentioned this evening, to the size. In SR2, things are more limited. So as of right, we're talking about 100 square meters.
Yeah.
And by development agreement, we are up to 500 square meters.
Yes.
In mixed use, as of right, we are up to 2,000 square meters. And over 2,000 square meters goes through a development agreement. Yeah.
I just wanted to. Other members, council, questions?
Thank you. Comments if I could. I had the opportunity to meet with Richard Elliott and some of the other people from the lake, and had some good conversations on what the issues were that they were concerned with. I met with them at my home, and I told them, I think it was pretty clear that I tried to react to these requests on what I felt the community wanted and how they felt about it. So I knew that this petition was going around, and that quite a few names here. I think we have 130 some names, and I'm not disputing where they're from or anything like that. I looked at it as it's a community of interest. They made these nature, and it doesn't matter. They live in the community, and I respect that. But it didn't have an opportunity on there for people who were in favor of it, which I was a little bit disappointed in, but I understand what he was trying to accomplish here, and there's a lot of people signed it. So I took it upon myself, rode at the shopping mall on 3 different occasions, spent quite a number of hours there actually, talking to people as they come in and out of the mall, trying to find out how they felt about this development. And I was quite surprised, probably a lot of people here won't want to hear this, but, and I heard a lot of talk about seniors. I think the seniors were more excited about the possibility of this development than anyone, that they'd have a place to go and possibly after hours and that type of thing. But overall, my point is here, when I talked to people at the mall, a lot of them, I think I had about 4 people in opposition, and I didn't pick out people, anyone who pulled in the mall, just asked them what they felt. I actually had people from the lake, people from HRN, people from Chester, people from Blanford, people from my community. And the feedback that I got was overwhelming support. And I know we have 100 and some names here, but I also represent probably 1,500 residents. So based on what I've heard from my community, they're excited about the idea of this development. And overall majority, I would say, support it. That's what I've heard back from the community. I spent a lot of time asking questions, not only at the mall, at the golf course, at breakfast at the Lions Club, and I've talked to quite a few people. So I'm fairly comfortable, regardless of my personal opinion of it, that the community at large is supportive of the development.
Gareth, can you bring up a map, because I'm guilty of not having gone down to take a look.
Yeah, a map
Of the piece that the. Yeah, I guess I'd just like to see it, you know, how it relates to the lakefront cottages.
And I think that's what you were speaking to as well, right? I'd like to see it where it's actually situated.
Yeah. Well, I don't know enough about, it's also keeping in line with the previous decisions you made, and anecdotes aren't very good.
So, okay, so this might be the first image that I'll show. So the red obviously is outlining the property in question.
Yes.
We've got obviously Highway 103 down here at the bottom, Maple Lake on the side, and Solar Lake is not named, but this is Solar Lake up here. So this is the frontage on Solar Lake. So the darker green dots here represent existing residential properties that don't immediately abut the subject property, as in they don't share a property line. And then the 2 sort of more yellowish dots are existing residential properties that do have a shared property line with the development. So that's the first piece.
Can you show me which, so this is the piece we're being requested to rezone.
Yes. Yeah, and I can, let me just.
The separation between what is already and what is not.
So this is obviously not a photo.
No,
we're looking at basically the same area here. So again, Highway 103, Maple Lake, Solar Lake, and the subject property. So you can see that the green is SR2 and the gray is mixed use. So actually more than half of the property, as was referred to here, the back portion of the property is already mixed use, would already support those larger type developments. And the request is to have the whole property fall under mixed use, including the piece that immediately, and this is just for clarity, this is all crown land where the expansion of the highway is going to be taking place. So there's no property owners between the development and the highway. Another point regarding access and traffic, and folks have probably heard this before at the public information meeting. So obviously all of the roads involved here are publicly owned by the province. They're not municipal roads. However, what we understand is that the access would be essentially immediately off of Mill Lake Road here. So in that perspective, the traffic that is generated won't really be passing any of the existing residents. They'll be turning onto the new road to access the lot here before they reach any of the existing residences.
Okay. So when we're talking about what I already know, but I'll just bring it so everybody knows. When we're talking about the protection of the lake, the only piece that would be in question from this perspective would be that little piece.
Right, this section here. And just, I guess, for extra information, the yellow or orange hashed mark here along with this little strip along the lake That represents, so we were talking about the lakeside zone, was the question just a few minutes ago. What is already there, shown by this hashed area, is the lakefront overlay.
The setback for buildings.
And that's a 20-meter or 65-foot setback for structures from the edge of the water.
So there'll be no structures can be built.
Right, and that applies today, and the rezoning doesn't take that away. It overlays over any zone, no matter what it is. If the lakeside zone was then considered, well, then that would likely be another band with different regulations.
With more vegetation.
Right, and vegetated buffer and some of the other pieces, the restrictions on commercial.
So can I ask a question, if you don't mind, with the setback? Am I allowed to?
Not really, no. Sorry, I mean, the public sessions are over. Yeah.
Can I just
No,
make a comment?
No, you cannot.
Well, the counselor, we should be able to refute what the counselor has said with his.
No, you cannot. No, the public session is over. And I
would
have,
like to make a comment as well.
the public session is over.
Mr. Shepherd's comments. His comments
The
about.
public
how-
session is over.
His comments about how.
The public
residents
session
are
has concluded.
second-class citizens and somehow are entitled to consideration. He's made this comment here tonight.
I'm gonna ask you to leave unless you sit
He made
down.
it at the earlier meeting, when the council first put this on first reading. And it really needs to be challenged.
We can adjourn the meeting.
Just kick him out.
Well, I've asked him to leave if he didn't sit.
We need to move on. There you go, you've been asked to leave, sir.
Now, he sat down. I'm fine if he sits down, it's up top. Public information session or public input session is over.
Well, it would have been nice to know that.
Well, that's why I asked if anybody else wanted to speak, and I said it was over when nobody else wanted to speak.
Comments were made after the public session was closed, that people don't have.
Only from council and our staff. We have the floor now, no one else does. So, any other comments or questions from members of council? Well, we're in a position there where we ought to make a decision or defer a decision. What's the wish of council?
We should have a vote.
Well, I
On the
know
motion.
there's nothing to vote on at the moment.
Oh, okay, I thought there was a
Somebody will
motion
have to
here.
tell me what you want to vote on.
Whether to accept the,
Or defer a decision, yes, those are the two options you have, or reject it.
we'll ask.
Approve it, reject it,
Ask
or
the question.
defer. That's where you are.
You, someone want me to make a motion?
But that's what I'm
Somebody
saying.
has to do something,
Well,
or else I'm going home.
I'll make the motion to approve the amendment.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion on the motion.
That's to rezone it to.
Yes,
Mixed use.
To next year, that portion.
any discussion on the motion? Hearing none? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried.
Does it say that all of us showed up to speak?
Motion to adjourn.
None of you want to talk.
What kind of democracy is this?
Discuss the points.
Motion to
brought up.
adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
This is corporate greed.
All those in favor?